So in the last lecture, we saw this graph problem known as a min cut, right? And we saw a very simple randomized algorithm which outputs min cut with high probability, right? The algorithm was simple enough to state. We didn't worry too much about its making it very efficient. It is still poly time. It's still efficient, but it can be further improved. We didn't discuss too much about its time complexity improvements and how to implement the algorithm carefully. But we saw that it has a very simple. The algorithm is very simple to state, and the analysis is also fairly straightforward. And we brushed up some of the probability uh, background, right, while analyzing the algorithm. Okay. So now what we will do is we will look at a related graph problem. Okay. Another cut problem, what is known as the max cut problem. Right. So this is it sounds similar to the min cut problem, just that in this case its complexity is fairly different as compared to min cut. Right. So so what is a max cut problem? So you're given just a minute. Okay. So you're given a graph G, okay, and this is again, let's say it's undirected, unweighted. And you want to output, so the max cut is a cut S complement that has the largest value among all cuts. Right? Recall that the value of a cut is the cardinality of the set S complement. Right? You're looking at the edges that go across the cut, and you want to find the cut that has the largest value. Right? So it is known that so this problem is actually NP hard. Right? Right? So unlikely to have a polynomial time algorithm. Unlikely to have a polynomial time algorithm which is either deterministic or randomized actually. Right? And what we will do is we will study this problem and see again a randomized algorithm which is not going to give you exactly the largest cut, but some approximation of the largest cut. Okay? And while we do that, we will brush up our background in random variables, right? And then once we see the algorithm, we will try to understand the algorithm a little bit more carefully. We'll try to understand the random variables involved in the algorithm, and try to make a few observations about it, and get a slightly we will see that understanding the properties of the random variables can even help us to convert, say, a randomized algorithm into a deterministic one, which we will do in this case. Okay, so that is what we are going to do in today's lecture. Okay, so the problem of interest is this max cut problem. Any questions so far regarding today's whatever I said today or something related to yesterday? Any questions so far? Okay. So we said that when we analyze a randomized algorithm, what we are interested in basically is understanding the random variable associated with that randomized algorithm. We want to understand the properties of the random variable. When does it take what value? What is the probability of that random variable taking a particular value, and so on. Okay. So to do that, let's just formally define a random variable. Okay. We'll again work with discrete probability spaces. So our sample space is going to be discrete for now. So a random variable is just formally it's a function. Right? It's a function denoted by this capital letter usually. It's a function from the sample space to the set of real numbers. Right? So this is the sample space. Right? So it basically says what value should you assign. It gives a way to assign values to outcomes of the experiment. Okay. Typically, you would have seen random variables defined by actually giving these, giving explicitly defining the random variables by giving the values for the outcomes. Whereas in a randomized algorithm, that random variable is implicitly defined by the outcome of the randomized algorithm. Okay. So just to look at an example, right? You might have seen examples before. Let's just go back to MinCut. Okay, just go back to MinCut. Okay. So if you look at the MinCut, then what is the random variable associated with the output? What is this random variable? Yeah. So okay. So one thing is the chosen edge, right? So if you look at it, so that is so let's go over that, right? So the algorithm goes as follows, right? It keeps finding edges and it keeps contracting edges, right? So the edge is not exactly a random variable. So that is one of the outcomes that you have, right? So a random variable is something that will assign some value to your outcomes. So if you want, you can think of this algorithm as this way, right? So it has a sequence of choices that it makes. Okay. So size of the cut. Okay. So I think both of your answers are, I mean, all these are somewhat correct. I mean, all of these are correct. Just that the final output of the algorithm is just the cut size, which is what we want to know, what we want to argue about, which is the random variable that we are really interested in. But then to understand these random variables, sometimes you might have to look inside the algorithm, see the elementary outcomes of this algorithm. So the chosen edge and the collection of edges and so on are the outcomes of your random choices that the algorithm makes. And together, at the end, what you have is a cut, which is a sequence of collection of edges. And for this collection of edges, you are assigning a value, which is the cut size. So you can think of your random variable x as maybe the cut size, okay, for now, which I'll call x. And omega for us would be what? Omega in this case would be the sequence of, so xe 0 or 1 for each edge, whether e is part of the cut or not, right? So that is correct, right? So x sub e 0 or 1, whether it is part of the cut. So that is another random variable that is associated with this algorithm, right? So let's look at the cut size, which is the random variable that we are really interested in. It is the value of the cut size that we want to argue about. So sometimes what happens is that this random variable might be very hard to argue about. This final random variable, which is the cut size, might be very difficult to argue about. So what typically happens is that you look at simpler random variables, which can be implicitly defined in the algorithms, which can somehow be combined using some functions to obtain the final random variable of interest. Okay. So in this case, let's say our final random variable of interest is the cut size. Okay. So omega is basically a sequence of edges, right? The sequence of edges is exactly the edges that are contracted. Right? And for every omega in capital omega, so every element is now a cut in the graph. Right? And this random variable x of omega is nothing but the cut size corresponding to that sequence of contractions. Right? So the output is this random variable which we want to study. So all the answers that you're given are actually correct. It's the cut size that we are interested in. But then typically when you want to study that cut size, that final random variable might be very hard to analyze, right? And we'll typically have to simplify that random variable into smaller random variables which can be easily analyzed. So, so all of your answers are partly correct. But if you want to look at just the output and say what is that random variable, that will be the cut size. Okay? So I guess you get the idea of what a random variable would mean. Right? You would have seen simple examples, but in the case of randomized algorithm, if there is a randomized algorithm, there is some random variable associated with it, and our job is to understand the properties of that random variable. Right? Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So, so that's a random variable, and to understand a random variable, there are a few things which are some measures, some statistics about this random variables that will be useful. Right? So, for instance, one of the most important statistics, which is statistic about a random variable, which is something that you should always know about, is what is known as the expectation. Right? Expectation of a random variable, or the mean. As the name suggests, it is basically telling you what is the average value that the random variable takes. Right? So the random variable, if you see, is this function, right? It's this function, right? So if you take different values of omega, different outcomes, then it gives different values. And what is the sort of average value that this random variable can take? That is what is expectation, right? Typically, so if you have a randomized algorithm and it has an output, you would typically ask what is the expected outcome of this randomized algorithm, right? Is the expected outcome what we actually hope to achieve by running this algorithm? Right? So when you want to analyze a randomized algorithm, typically what you have is you have a random variable, and then if you can actually argue about the probability of the random variable taking a particular value, then that is the best. But sometimes that calculation is not very straightforward. So what you do is you look at the expected behavior of this random variable, and then you say that this is the expected behavior of your randomized algorithm. This is the expected outcome of the randomized algorithm. Now, how likely is it that this random variable is going to behave like this expected value? How likely is it to actually deviate away from this expected value, and so on? That's typically how you will start analyzing a randomized algorithm. So the expectation is a very important statistic. It doesn't give you a lot of information, but it gives you sufficient information from which you can infer a lot of things. Okay, so let's just define what the expectation is. So the expectation of a random variable x is nothing but the summation over the probability that an outcome omega of capital Omega comes times the value of the random variable, right? So it's basically an average of these quantities, right? Weighted by the probability. If the probability was uniform across the sample space, then this is actually the average that you take. You sum divided by the total number of elements. Right? If it was a uniform, if every element of the sample space had equal probability, then this is just the average. If it is not equal, then it is a weighted average of the outcome of this random of the values of this random variable. Okay? So this is the expectation, right? It's a standard thing that you would, the standard definition. It's an average. Okay. You have probably seen this before. If you're not clear about something, just stop me at any point. Okay. So that's the expectation of a random variable. So what we'll see now is that we'll see an algorithm, right? A randomized algorithm for Maxcan, and we'll try to understand what is the expected outcome of this algorithm. Okay. We'll see that it's very difficult to actually argue about the random variable directly. Like earlier we said, what is the probability that you're going to get a min cut or something, right? What is the probability that this random variable will take a value k, where k is the value of the min cut? We'll see that this is going to be difficult to argue for for max cut. So what we'll start off is we'll try to understand the expectation of this random variable. Okay. Now, so as mentioned in some of the comments before, right? So if you really want to understand a random variable, you need to, so the first thing is to understand the expectation. Sometimes it turns out that expectation calculation. So if you want to calculate the expectation, then this is the first principles equation, right? I mean, if you want to do, you just try to calculate the sum. If you calculate the sum, you can get the expectation. But it turns out that this might not be very easy to calculate in a lot of situations, right? So one very useful property of expectation that can be used in a lot of places, right, is something known as the linearity property. Okay? What is known as the linearity of expectation. Okay? So the linearity of expectation says that if x1, x2, so on till xn are n random variables, right, then the expected value of x and suppose n random variables, and suppose that x is the sum of these random variables, right? So the sum of a random variable, sum of n random variables, is also a random variable, right? Because these xi's can take different values depending on for different elements of the sample space, and therefore x is also a random variable, right? So suppose that x is the sum of these random variables, then the expected value of x is the sum of the expected values of these xi's. Okay? So if you can write x as the sum of n random variables, then the expectation of x is the sum of the expectations. Okay? The reason this is very useful is that sometimes you have a complicated random variable x, which can be expressed as the sum of much simpler random variables xi's, which are easier to analyze and so on. And then to compute the expectation of x, it's sufficient to just compute the expectation of xi's and add them up. Okay? And the other thing is, we don't really care what these random variables are, whether they are dependent on each other, independent on each other, and so on, right? It works for any n random variables, right? So it's a very useful fact. It's a very straightforward fact. It's not very difficult to prove this. You can see this. It's a standard proof. It's there in every book, and it's a fairly straightforward claim to believe as well, right? But it's incredibly useful when analyzing randomized algorithms. Okay, something that you should never forget. It's something that you should first try out. When you see a complicated random variable that comes in when you're analyzing a randomized algorithm, the first thing you should try is whether you can, think of it as sum of simpler random variables, which you can then use, right, to compute the expectation. Okay, so that's the linearity of expectation, right? And the other thing is, again, the notion of, you can, just like you have the notion of independence for events, you have the notion of independence of random variables. So it's fairly straightforward. I mean, the idea is fairly straightforward. So in the case of independence, we said, what is the probability that if I tell you that a probability event has occurred, what is the probability that E2 will occur, given that event has occurred? Is it same as the probability of E2, or does it change depending on the knowledge that event has occurred? Right? If the probability changes depending on the knowledge that event has occurred, then you say that E1 and E2 are dependent. Right? Similarly, for random variables, say you have two random variables x and y, right? Two random variables from omega to r. Right? We'll say that x and y are independent. If you take any omega 1, omega 2 in capital Omega, the probability that, if you take if for every, say, small x and small y in R, right? If I say that the probability that x is equal to small x and y is equal to small y is same as probability that x is equal to small x into probability that y is equal to small y. Okay, so let me just explain what this means, right? It's probably clear, but just let me explain what it means, right? So what does this mean? So the notation has slightly changed, right? We are saying that so x is a real number, and capital X is a random variable that takes a real number. So what does this mean? It means that so you can look at all the subsets. So let omega prime be look at all the look at all omega in capital Omega such that capital X of omega is equal to small x, right? So probability of capital X equal to X is basically, so this defines an event, right? So you can look at the event, call it E, which is the set of all omega in capital Omega such that X of omega is equal to X. And probability that X is equal to X is same as saying is the probability of this event E, right? So what is the probability that this random variable takes a value X is look at all the outcomes for which this random variable takes a value small x. And you're looking at that event. You're looking at the probability of that event. So what this says is if I tell you the value of X, does it mean that you can, does the probability that y is equal to a particular value, does it vary with the knowledge that the random variable capital X has taken the value small x? So this is what independence is, right? It's very similar to, it's almost similar to independence of events, right? Because X equal to X defines this event, and you're saying that, so this is, right, this definition is equivalent to saying that probability that E1 intersection E2 is same as probability of E1 into probability of E2, right? Where E1 is this event, and E2 is a corresponding event, which is the set of all omega in capital Omega such that y of small omega is equal to y. So the independence of events can directly be extended to the notion of independence of random variables. Okay. So these are some simple properties of random variables that we should at least keep in mind for now, right? And with this in mind, we will go and try to understand this randomized algorithm for max cut and try to analyze it. Okay. Any questions so far? So this linearity of expectation is something that might seem very straightforward, but it's extremely useful, something that you should never forget. Okay. All right. So let's try to understand the max cut algorithm. So this is this randomized max cut. The algorithm is going to be fairly simple, right? So what it's going to do is for every, so you have two vertex sets, call it V1 and V2. Okay. Or rather, let's say V0 and V1. Okay. Which are initially empty. Okay. Now what you do is for every vertex U in V. Okay, so the graph is G with vertex at V and T. For every vertex U in V, what you do is you choose a bit B in 0, 1 uniformly at random, right? And then you assign U to the vertex at V sub V. Okay. So for every vertex, I choose that vertex to go into vertex at 0 or vertex at 1. Okay. And at the end of this, what you have is a cut. Now what you do is you just output X, which is the set of edges UV, such that U is in V0 and V is in V1. Okay. So this is, let's look at this algorithm, right? It's a very straightforward algorithm, right? what you're doing is you're randomly constructing a cut. Every vertex is randomly assigned one part of the cut. And at the end, once you have assigned all vertices to one of the two parts, you look at what is the number of edges that cross this cut. Right? Is this algorithm clear? Any questions on this algorithm? Okay. Right. All right. So let's just try to understand this. So what are we interested in? We are interested in this random variable x. Right? We want to know what are the properties of this random variable. In particular, we want to know what is the probability that its output is a max cut. Right? What is the probability that x will output? So maybe this is a number. Okay, I'll call this the cardinality of the set, for instance. Okay. Now the question is, what is the probability that x outputs the max cut? All right. So for that, so if you recall the analysis of min cut, what did we do? We said instead of analyzing what is the probability that it outputs some min cut, we said it's sufficient to look at the probability that fix a min cut. What is the probability that it will output that particular min cut? That is what we actually bounded, right, in that analysis. If you recall the analysis, that's what we actually did. So in this algorithm, suppose I fix a max cut. What is the probability that that max cut is going to be output by this algorithm? Let's try to do the same thing as min cut. Let's try to do the same analysis as that. You fix a max cut. What is the probability that your algorithm will output that max cut? Let me just write down. Fix a cut. Fix a max cut. S comma S complement. I want to know what is the probability that x is equal to the cardinality of E of S comma S complement. Based on this algorithm.
It must be like at least the probability that the cut output is the corresponding max cut we are considering.
Cut output is no. So I fixed a cut. So I want to know for this fixed cut, what is the value that it is this value. So it is what you're saying. It's at least the probability that.
So, like, have you fixed a cut or fixed the size of the cut here?
Say I fixed a cut. What is the probability that that fixed cut is? So for instance, I fixed a cut. What is the probability that v0 comma v1 is equal to S comma S complement? Say, maybe I'll reword the question. This is what I want to know. I fix a cut. What is the probability that this randomized algorithm is going to find this? Will find this cut exactly?
1 by 2 power n if the pair is ordered, n minus 1 if it's not ordered, I guess.
Why n minus 1 if it is odd?
If it is ordered, I mean the pair cut.
Okay. So let's say it's not ordered, right? I don't
Then
really.
1 by 2 power n minus 1.
Yeah, 1 by 2 power n. So I think Srikanth and Sarthak looked at ordered sets and said 1 over 2 power n minus 1. Yeah, that's right. So this is 1 over 2 power n. So that's good. So it's 1 over 2 power n, right? So what this means is that this randomized algorithm is actually defining a probability distribution over the cuts in the graph, right? This max cut algorithm defines a probability distribution over cuts in the graph. Every cut gets some probability value, right? And what we have just seen is that this randomized algorithm actually assigns the uniform distribution over the cuts in the graph, right? So this algorithm, right, the randomized max cut, defines the uniform distribution over the cuts in the graph. Right. So if you really want to do this, and if you want to do a similar analysis by saying that this is the probability that you will get a particular cut, so let's repeat it and so on until you find the maximum value, and then you'll take that as a max cut. That directly leads to an exponential time algorithm, right? right? Because it is possible that there is exactly one max cut in the graph, and the uniform distribution over the entire set of cuts would mean that this cut is going to be sampled with probability just 1 over 2 power n, and therefore you're very highly unlikely to see this cut unless you repeat this for 2 power n steps. Right? Can you think of a graph which has exactly one max cut? In fact, a graph where the entire edge set is a max cut.
Complete bipartite graph.
Right? Yeah. So if you look at the complete bipartite graph, right? Complete bipartite graph on, say, complete bipartite graph, call it, say, KNN, right? The max cut size is n squared. And there is exactly one max cut. It's just the entire edge set has to be there in that max cut. And this algorithm that we just saw is defining a uniform distribution over all cuts. So the probability that you will output this cut is actually highly unlikely. It's just 1 over 2 power n, or 1 over 2 power 2n in this case, right? There are 2n vertices, right? So it's highly unlikely that you will actually get hold of this cut, right? So if you want to do a similar analysis to the min cut, then this will give you very bad bounds, right? This is not exactly going to give you a good algorithm. But that is okay. Anyway, you don't expect to get such good algorithms because we know max cut is NP hard, and you're unlikely to have polytime randomized algorithms also. So you're unlikely to, unlikely to give you any good answer. So the next thing is to actually understand this random variable x. And for that, we actually are going to compute the expected value of x. So what is the expected size of the cut returned by the randomized algorithm? So let's write it from first principles. What you're interested in, expectation of x. What is this? This is summation over all the cuts s comma s complement, right? The probability that you will sample this cut, which is 1 over 2 power n according to the algorithm, times the cardinality of this cut, right? Something like this. This is what is the expected value of the output of the algorithm, right? This is because all cuts are sampled uniformly by the algorithm. This is what we want to calculate. But notice that this quantity is an extremely difficult quantity to compute, right? This is a difficult quantity to compute. How do you compute this quantity? You don't know what the graph is. You said that there is some graph with vertex set V and edge set E. What can you say about this quantity at all? Right? It depends on the graph. It seems like almost impossible to compute it straight away. Right? If I just tell you what is the cut without telling you what is the structure of the graph, this seems a very hard thing to compute. Right? So this first principle calculation might not yield a very good answer, right? A very satisfactory answer. And this is where it is sometimes useful to think of this random variable as being composed of simpler random variables, which are easier to analyze. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So in this case, so it's again, let's try to understand what are the simpler random variables, right? So what we're interested in is the cut size, which is the number of edges that cross a cut. And based on the answers that you've given to the min cut question earlier, right? We are actually interested in the edges being in the cut or not. We're actually interested in what are the edges that are going into the cut when you run this randomized algorithm. Right? So you can think of a random variable for every edge. Okay, that random variable takes a value 1 or 0 depending on whether that edge is in the cut or not when you run this randomized algorithm. Okay. The reason we are looking at the edges is that finally what we are interested in is in the number of edges that are in the cut. So let's look at individual edges and see whether they are in the cut or not. Okay. So therefore we can look at the following random variable, right? So for every edge E, is equal to uv, I can define a random variable x sub e, which is 1 if e is in the cut, okay, and it is 0 otherwise. Okay. So this is the cut. So this cut is obtained from the randomized algorithm. Right. So every edge I can associate a random variable, which basically denotes whether that edge is in the cut or not. Okay. And such random variables, right, these are sometimes called indicator random variables. They're called so because they indicate whether an event has occurred. Okay. So indicator random variables typically try to capture whether a particular event has occurred. Okay. So in this case, the event of interest is whether the edge E is in the cut when you run the randomized algorithm. Indicator random variables take 1 or 0. 1 means that the event has occurred. 0 means that the event has not occurred. Okay. So x sub E is an indicator random variable which indicates whether the event that E is in the cut has happened or not. Okay. So x, right? So that is the event. So the event is actually written here, right? This is the event of interest, right? E is in the cut set or cut set. Okay. The nice thing about indicator random variables is that the expected value of the indicator random variable, if you use the first principle argument, it is basically the probability that x is equal to 1 into 1 because it takes the value 1 plus the probability that x is equal to 0 into 0, right, which is nothing but the probability that x is equal to 1. Okay, and this quantity is the probability for the event to happen, to occur. Right. So indicator random variables are indicating whether a particular event has occurred, and they're nice random variables because their expectation is actually equal to the probability of that corresponding event to have occurred. Okay. Is this clear? Any questions on this? So the way that we define this random variable comes out of the randomized algorithm and also what we are actually trying to analyze, right? Since we are interested in the number of edges, we look at the corresponding, a simpler way is to look at per individual edges and see whether they are in the cut, which is why we went forward and tried to define a random variable this way, right? Okay. So now you can write your random variable x in a much more simple way, right? You can say that x is the summation of x sub e, where e is a edge in the graph. Okay. Your random variables now, x is actually the cut size, right? This is the cut size, and you sum over all edges. The edges that are there in the cut will add 1 to the sum, others will add 0. So finally what you have is a cut size, right? So now you have expressed x in a much more simpler way, right, as sum of simpler indicator random variables. Okay. So therefore if you want to compute the expectation, then this becomes much more simpler, right? It says that it's in e expectation of x sub e, right? So all we are interested, so now what you want to do is, so this is nothing but, so all we are interested in is computing the expectation of x sub e for an edge e in uv. Correct? And what is this value? So we are interested in the probability that x is equal to 1, the event that e is in the cut set. And when does e occur in the cut set? It can happen in two ways, right? Either the vertex u is in v0 and v is in v1. This is one way it can happen. Or u is in v1 and v is in v0. Right? In both these ways, you can actually have e in the cut set. Okay, and these are disjoint events, right? U in v0 and u in v1 are disjoint events, so this is nothing but the sum of these probabilities. And furthermore, this, if you look at it, if you look at the algorithm, how was the vertices assigned to sets? They were completely at random, independent of how the other vertices were assigned to set, right? So for a particular U, I will choose independently and uniformly at random where that vertex should go, independent of all the other vertices, right? So therefore, this is nothing but probability that U is in V0 into probability that V is in V1 plus similarly probability that U is in V1 times the probability that V is in V0, right? And this probability is half. So this is 1, 4 plus 1, 4, which is equal to half. So the expected value of the random variable X sub E is just half. Okay. So therefore, we can say that the expected size of the cut returned by the algorithm is cardinality of the edge set divided by 2. Right? Because each of these values are equal to half. Right? So what we know is that this randomized max cut algorithm outputs some cut, and the expected value on an average, the cut that it returns is of cardinality E divided by 2, right? Where cardinality is the number of edges. That is the expected behavior of this algorithm. Any questions so far in this? All right. So notice that this is not very satisfactory still, right? If you look at the analysis that we have done so far, we've already always said that the probability that it will take a particular value is at least so much. You've always tried to prove that there is a high probability, high chance that you will output a good value. Whereas here you're saying that on expectation, it is, it's going to output a cut of size cardinality E over 2. Maybe it's going to output a cut of very small size, or maybe, very high size. You don't know. In fact, you don't know how, all you know is that the average is so much, but you don't know how the values, the random variable is actually varying, right? It is possible that there is one output which is a very large size and a lot of outputs which are of very small size, such that the average somehow manages to be cardinality E over 2. In which case, you're more likely to answer a smaller output, a smaller cut value than a larger cut value. Right? So the expectation is not giving you the entire picture of how this random variable is behaving. Right? It just tells you that this is what you can expect. Right? Among all the runs, if you run this so many times, then on an average, the cut that you will get is cardinality over 2. That's something, that's sort of the observation that you can make from this this proof that we have done. Right? Okay. But if you actually look at the proof, we have actually proved something much stronger than just this fact. Okay? We're not just proving that this randomized algorithm is giving you a cut of size, at least you're getting a cut whose expected value is at least E over 2. We have actually proved a much stronger theorem which is true for every graph. Okay? What we've actually shown is that if G is a graph, if G has M edges, right, then G has a cut of size at least M over 2. Okay. So we have not just got one algorithm which has some expected behavior. We have actually proved a property of graphs in general. Right? We'll see why this is true, right? What we are saying is that take any graph with M edges, then that graph will contain a cut of size at least M over 2. What we've actually proved is this statement. Let's see why that is true, right? And to see that, let's go back to the first principles definition of, the expectation, right? So what is the expected value? So the expected value of the random variable X is summation over all the cuts S comma S complement 1 over 2 power n, which is the probability with which that cut is generated, times the cardinality of the cut. Right? This is the first principles definition. We didn't actually use this to compute the expectation. We computed the expectation some other way, But we observed that the expected value of this is equal to m divided by 2. Okay, this follows from the proof above. Right, we don't really care about the graph, right? We didn't actually look at the structure of the graph or anything, but there are two ways in which you can look at this expectation. One based on the first principles definition, which is what is written first, and then we analyzed it in a different way, right? And we said that this value must be equal to m over 2. Okay, so now what you can say is that if the average is equal to m over 2, then there must exist a cut whose value is at least m over 2, right? Because if all of these values, right, these are the values that we're looking at, if all of them are actually, say, less than m over 2, then the sum will actually be less than m over 2, right? Because there are 1 power, 1 over 2 power and cuts, and each of them is giving you a value of less than m over 2, then the sum is also going to be less than m over 2, whereas we know the sum is equal to m over 2, which means that this graph must contain a cut of cardinality at least m over 2. So while analyzing this randomized algorithm, we have actually proved a structural property of any graph, right? Which is that if the graph has m edges, it must contain a cut of size at least m over 2. Right? And it just follows from the fact that if the average is equal to some value, then there must actually be a member in that sum whose value is at least as large as the average. Right? So this is one corollary actually of the randomized algorithm and its analysis. Right? We somehow never looked at the graph, its structure or anything, yet we proved a property which is true for every graph. Right? And this way of proving things, right? So this is an example of what is known as the probabilistic method. Right? It's a very powerful tool to prove many combinatorial properties. Right? So what it does is basically it says, if you randomly choose an element, if you want to show that there exists an object with a certain property, you define a probability distribution over the set of objects, and then you say you sample an element according to that distribution. What is the probability that it has a particular property? Right? In this case, we define a probability distribution over all the cuts in the graph. That probability distribution is a uniform distribution. And then we say that if you sample a uniformly random cut, what is its expected value? Based on that, we can say something about the properties of that object. Okay? This is a very powerful technique. Probabilistic method is extremely powerful. There are many different ways in which it can be applied, and they can give you very highly non-trivial results. Right? Just that there is just one small catch to this, which is that you don't actually know how to get the cut. All you know is that every graph must have a cut of size at least m over 2. Your randomized algorithm tells you that if you do this random selection, then in expectation you will get a cut of size m over 2. Yet you don't know how to actually get hold of a cut of size at least m over 2. Right? It's a very non-constructive proof. Right? The probabilistic method proof is non-constructive. It tells you that there must exist a cut, but you have no idea how to get hold of the cut. But you know that if you randomly select a cut, then on an average its value will be m over 2, what you want to see. Okay. Any questions? So these are some observations about the algorithm and its analysis. Any questions so far?
If you just keep repeating the algorithm until you can take maximum of all cuts, isn't it I mean, I feel that it must give something with at least e by 2 with high probability.
So that's what, right? So that again, so you need to know what is the probability that you will get a cut of. For that, you need to know what is the probability that x is going to be greater than e over 2, right? That's what you want to know. Only then you can say how many times you should repeat, right? If it's a highly unlikely event, say the average is such that the average is because of the distribution is in such a way that the weight on cuts of size less than m over 2 is more, right? Is larger, but then somehow the averaging makes it makes it e over 2, right? Then it's possible that you are unlikely to get the cut. It must be there. The expectation is there, but you're unlikely to get it. The probability
okay,
might
okay,
be.
okay.
So the expectation is just one statistic about the random variable. To fully know what happens, you need to know other things like variance and so on. How does a random variable, the value vary around the expectation and so on, right? So this alone does not tell you anything about how it behaves. That's all I'm saying. Right? Any other questions? Okay. So what you're going to do next is actually find a way to construct this cut. Okay? We are going to actually construct such a cut of size at least m over 2. Okay. And furthermore, the way we are going to construct it, we are going to construct it deterministically. We are going to convert this randomized algorithm into a deterministic algorithm that will always output a cut of size at least m over 2. Okay, that's what we are going to do next. And to do that, we want to understand these random variables a little bit more carefully. Right? The random variables, these random variables x, x sub e, and so on, we need to understand a little more carefully to do that analysis. Okay, that's what we're going to do next. Okay. So we know the notion of independence and dependence of random variables, right? So let's understand. So we are going to analyze, say, let's analyze these random variables x sub e. Okay, let's analyze these random variables. The first question is, are they independent? Are these random variables independent? Any guesses?
No, I guess.
Do you have some reason why?
Like, suppose you have three vertices UVW,
Huh.
and you say that UV is in the cut set and UW is in the cut set,
Yeah.
and we already know that VW cannot be in the cut set.
Exactly. That's the right reason, right? So let's look at the examples. We look at three cases, right? So let's look at three edges. Okay. The first case is that these edges are like this: E1, E2, E3. They don't share any vertices. Okay. The second example is that you have two edges where E1 and E2 are like this, and E3 is this way. And the third is where what Raghu was saying, right? E1, E2, E3. Okay. So now let's look at case one. Okay, this is case one. Are these three, so now corresponding to E1, E2, E3, there are random variables x, E1, x, E2, x, E3. Are they independent? Are these three random variables independent?
Yeah, because whether or not one exists,
Yeah. So
doesn't
these
depend.
are independent. Yeah, you're right. They are independent mainly because how do you choose the value for xe1? Xe1 depends on the choice of where the endpoints go. Right? It just depends on where the endpoints go. Correct? And where the endpoints go are independent of for different vertices, right? So where if you call this as say u1 and this is say u2, then the probability that u1 goes somewhere is independent of where u2 goes, right? These are all independent variables, right? So this is definitely independent. So K, Raghu was saying, right? So now here what happens is if you look at say call this u, v and w, okay? Suppose I say that u is in v0, v is in v1, right? And w is in v1, okay? Which basically, so this would mean that x e1 is equal to 1, right? Because u is in v0 and v is in v1. Similarly, x e2 is 0 because V is in V1 and W is in V1. Okay. If I tell you both of this, then what it means is that you have two partitions, say V0 and V1, and you know that U is sitting here. You know V and W are sitting here. So this is U, this is V and W. And this edge is here and this edge is here. Now, this is fixed now, right? UW must, this value X E3 must be equal to 1 because you've already said where U is going and where V and W are going. So therefore, X E3 has no choice other than to be 1, right? So this is not independent. What about case 2?
So I mean, I think like suppose you consider every edge and you I mean, you can uh, try out all the 2 power how many ever edges are there possibilities of whether they are there in the cut or not. And as long as all of them are possible, I think there must be independent.
No, I didn't understand that.
Like for example, like so even either E1 is in the cut or not, either E2 is in the cut or not, or either E3 is in the cut or not. So there are 8 possibilities. As long as all the possibilities, as long as it is possible to have an assignment of vertices such that all the 8 possibilities are possible.
Okay. Yeah, so that is what, right? If you say E1 and E2, if I fix values, can you, does E3 depend? Or if I say what is E1 and E3? So in this case, so in particular case, yeah. So yeah, whether it's independent or not. So Sarthak has already said that it is independent, right?
So I think like as long as the set of edges don't have an odd cycle within them, they must be independent.
Okay, if they don't have an odd cycle among them, they must be independent. Probably that is correct. I don't know. I haven't verified that. That is probably true. Yeah, that's probably true. Okay, good. So these cases. So yeah, so these are independent. So what Srikanth you're saying is probably correct, right? And in this particular case, they are also independent, right? Okay, that's good. So one thing that you can know say here is that for every pair of edges, okay, E1 and E2, okay, X E1 and X E2 are independent in particular. Okay, this is definitely true for this random variables, right? If X1 and X2, if you take any two variables E1 and E2, then Xe1 and Xe2 must be independent. The reason is that even if they share one vertex, right? The easiest way to see this is that even if they share one vertex, right? If I tell you the value for E1, okay, then given Xe1, there is a free choice for the vertex W, right? And therefore it can be in the cut or outside the cut with probability half, and therefore Xe1 and Xe2 must be independent. Okay. So if you take 2 edges, then the corresponding random variables are independent. But if you take more than 2, then they need not be necessarily independent. Okay. So what you actually say is that the set Xe is actually pairwise independent. So they are not independent as such, but for every pair of edges, they are independent. Okay. So these edges are not exactly independent. They don't need full independence. They are some special type of. They need only very restricted type of independence. Okay. So that is the first observation that we have about these random variables. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So now let's understand the analysis of this algorithm a little more carefully, right? And from there we will actually try to get hold of the cut, right? Our goal is to actually get a cut of cardinality at least M over 2. For that, let's go and understand the analysis. Okay, let's look at this part here. Okay, let's look at the part where variable xc is equal to 1. What is the probability of that? Okay. Now, we said that the probability of xc is equal to 1 is half, and the reason it was half was because it was the sum of two disjoint events, and each event was the intersection of two independent events, right? All you needed was that. So this step here, right? This step required the fact that the event that u is in v0 is independent of the event that v is in v1. Correct? And as long as we have that property, we have that this calculation will go through. Right? So what we actually want is that the event that u is in v0 is independent of the event that v is in v1. Correct? So this, if you think about this, our algorithm actually assigned independently every vertex uniformly and independently at random, right? The way in which we assigned vertices to parts was in such a way that all these events are completely independent. That is the way in which the algorithm has been defined. But our analysis somehow does not seem to assume full independence. We just need pairwise independence of these events. We just need to make sure that the probability that u goes to v0 and v goes to v1 are independent. We don't really care if you take u, v, and w. The probability that u goes to v0, v goes to v1, w goes to v0, whether those three events are actually independent or not. That is not required in the algorithm. Even though that the algorithm gives you that, the analysis somehow does not require that. The analysis is much weaker. It does not require full independence for the analysis to be completed. And this is where we are going to actually, this observation is what is going to help us get hold of a cut. Right? This is where we are actually going to get hold of a deterministic algorithm even. Right? The fact that the events are not actually independent, we don't require full independence, but only pairwise independence. Right? And that comes by observing the analysis of our algorithm. Right? That is all that is required for the algorithm to work, even though the algorithm gives you much bigger guarantees, that those are not required while analyzing the algorithm. So you'll notice that when you're actually designing and analyzing randomized algorithms, in many cases, you might start out with a fully independent or completely uniformly random element and so on. But then once you start doing the analysis, you will realize that you don't actually need that full independence. You might be able to do the analysis even with partial limited dependence and so on. And that can typically lead to better algorithms, sometimes even way to convert algorithms to deterministic algorithms and so on. Okay? That's what we are going to do. Okay? It is this observation that is what we are going to use to get hold of a cut of cardinality M over 2. Okay? So that's what we are going to. So what we are going to do next is this notion, right? So what we are going to say is that you're going to convert a randomized max cut to deterministic max cut. And the deterministic max cut will always output a cut of size at least M over 2. Okay. Any questions so far? So is it clear? I mean, that analysis of why we need only pairwise independence, and that is what we are going to crucially use now. Okay. Okay. So here is how we are going to go about this. So let me write a new randomized algorithm. So this is rand max cut 2 version 2. This is going to do the following. Okay, so what we'll do is we will randomly sample a string b bar of log n length. n is the number of, so this is, you have a graph G, V, comma, E, and cardinality of V is equal to n. So you randomly sample a string of log n length, of binary string of log n length. Okay. And now we are now going to see a way to assign, so somehow we need to construct a cut, right? We need to somehow construct a cut. The way we construct the cut is as follows. Okay? So let's take a vertex U in V. Okay. Then I can write U in binary form, right? In a binary form. So let's say, so I'll write U, I can represent it as a string in 0, 1 to the log n. Right? I can represent U as a string in 0, 1 to the log n. Right? For instance, if V, the cardinality of V is equal to 8, I can say that the vertices are numbered 0, 1, 2, 3 up till 7. And then this corresponds to the string 0, 0, 0, 1 corresponds to 0, 0, 1, 2 corresponds to 0, 1, 0, and so on. Right? So for every vertex U, I can think of this binary string of log n length. And corresponding to this binary string, I can also think of a set S sub U. Okay? So this is the characteristic, this is the set whose characteristic vector is this string. Okay. So what does that mean? So for instance, if I take 0, the vertex 0, okay, then that is represented by the string 0, 0, 0, and S sub U is the empty set. Similarly, 1 is represented by the string 0, 0, 1, and S sub U is the set 1. Or rather, I'll number it from here. Okay, I'll call it 1, 2, 3. Okay, so this set is the set, say 3. Similarly, 2 corresponds to the string 0, 1, 0, and S sub U is the set 2. 3 is the string 0, 1, 1, and S sub, okay, I'll call it 0, I'll write it. S0, S1, S2, S3 is basically the set 2, 3, and so on. Right? So I can define these sets corresponding to every vertex. Now what do I do is the following. Okay, I find this bit B sub U, which is the XOR of all the BIs. Okay, so let's say so let me just let B bar be equal to B1, B2 up till Bk, where k is equal to log n. Okay, this is your string B complement. This is the B bar here. Right. Now I define this string this bit B sub U, which is the XOR over all the I in S sub U of Bi. Right? So for example, if your B bar is the string 101, okay, then B corresponding to the set S0, right? So the value will be XOR of all the I in S0 of Bi, in which case it is 0 because it's empty. For this set here, right, for S3, it is the sum XOR of all the I in S3 of Bi. What are the I's in S3? 2 and 3. So you look at the position 2 and 3, which is these two positions. So their XOR is basically equal to 1. Right? And what you'll do is now you will assign the vertex U to the set VBU. Okay. So BU is either 0 or 1 because it's an XOR. Now you assign the vertex U to the set V sub BU. Okay. Is this construction clear? Earlier, what we did was for every vertex you will uniformly assign it to one of the vertices, one of the parts. But now what you do is you don't just assign it uniformly, but you assign it based on this procedure. Okay. Is this procedure clear of what we are doing here? Any questions on this?
So please explain this XOR procedure once.
Which one? The XOR one.
Yeah.
Okay. So what you do, so you have some string B bar. B bar is the one that you have randomly sampled, right? Now for every vertex, I have the set S sub U. Is it clear how the set S sub U is created?
Yeah.
That is clear. So now what you do, so S sub U is a set whose values are between 1 and log n, right? It contains elements between 1 and log n.
Yeah.
So look at all the positions that are there in SU. Look at the corresponding bits in B, and you take an XOR of all those bits. Right?
Okay.
For in the case of S3, right?
Yeah.
S3, the values are 2 and 3. So you look
Yeah.
at the second and third position of B, which is this, right? That's
Yeah.
the second and third position. Take those bits and take their XOR. So 0 XOR 1, which is 1.
Oh, the output of the XOR will be the answer of BU.
That will be BU.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right? That will be the value BU. So that is 0 or 1. And if it is 0 or 1, depending on that, you assign that vertex to that corresponding set.
Okay.
Right? Is this clear? Okay. So now what happens is that, this is the part. Initially, the assignment was very simple, right? What you did was you just assigned vertices uniformly and independently at random. But now the assignment has become a little more complicated. But then the remaining part is same. So now you do this. Finally, you return X, which is the cardinality of the edges that cross the cut, obtained this way. Okay. And our goal is again to analyze X. Okay. It's just that assignment of vertices to parts has become a little more complicated. You will see that it's not very complicated. As we go along in this course, you will see similar construction. So this is a fairly standard way to, get hold of what is known as pairwise independence. Okay. So now let me ask this following question, right? Before we analyze this, let's ask this following question. Suppose I take 3 vertices. Okay. Earlier, when I took 3 vertices, then the probability that, the event which corresponds to whether these vertices are in particular sets, they were completely independent. Do you think that independence still remains if you take 3 vertices? So now you take U, V, W, right? So look at the event that U is in V0, V is in V0, W is in V0, right? Is this, independent? In the sense, you look at the events, which is U is in V0, this is 1, V is in V0, and W is in V0, say. Are these independent? Okay, so I think we are almost out of time now. Okay, so you can try to see that this is actually not going to be independent. Okay, that is something that you can just verify. We will go over this. I mean, I'll do this computation again tomorrow, but you will realize, you will see that this is actually not going to be independent, but it's going to be pairwise independent. So what is going to happen is that this is these random variables, that U being U0, V being V0, and so on, are not independent, but they are pairwise independent. So the expected value of this random variable is exactly equal to the same as equal to M over 2 as before, because the same calculation will go through, right? Because the analysis only required pairwise independence, and we will show that this is actually pairwise independent. Therefore, the same calculation will go through. So this randomized algorithm is also going to be another randomized algorithm that gives you an expected cut of size m over 2. Okay. And the nice thing about this randomized algorithm is that this randomized algorithm only uses log n random bits. Okay. So what we will do then is that we will just brute force iterate over all log n, all strings of length log n. You know that if you take a random string of length log n and if you do this procedure, you're expected to get a cut of size at least m over 2, which means that for some string you must get a cut of size at least m over 2. So if I just brute force randomly run over all possible strings of length log n and do this and take the largest value, then that must be a cut of size at least m over 2. And that is going to give me my cut explicitly. And I can brute force run over all strings of log n because there are only polynomially many such strings. In the earlier algorithm, you are actually choosing a string of length n, right? Because you are independently assigning every vertex to a part. Here you are not going to do that, right? And you saved on the randomness because we didn't go for full independence, but rather pairwise independence. Okay? So all this is what we will do tomorrow. We'll finish this analysis and see how this gives you actually a cut. Deterministically, we'll get hold of a cut of size m over 2. Okay, that part we will do tomorrow. Any questions on what we did today?
I got reminded of one thing. So you mentioned that here, in compared to this one and the previous one, the number of random bits that you are taking or you are sampling is different. So similarly, like in previous class, also we had one algorithm. So does the sampling of, I noticed that the sampling of random algorithms is not there. Is that something to be taken into account in analysis? Specifically, if you want to do.
Not really, at least for randomized algorithms, we don't care so much, but people do. So if you want to convert randomized algorithms to deterministic ones, sometimes you will see that you can actually reduce the number of random bits, right? For instance, if you take the min-cut algorithm, you repeat it, right? Each time you need independent random coins. Only then the analysis is correct, right? Only then you get the independence and do the product raised to the k and everything. But it is possible to do this without independent random, each time not without taking independent and fresh random bits, right? It's not essential, but sometimes it is very useful, right?
Yes, I would imagine an algorithm that uses lesser number of total number of samples.
That would be
better.
That is better, but you don't want to do it if it makes it too complicated and so on, right? Typically, this will be needed, right? For instance, when you study hashing, we'll see hashing. Most of the analysis of hashing will basically assume that you have a perfectly random hash function, okay? But nowhere will you actually get hold of perfectly random hash function, right? Perfectly random hash functions is not possible. You will always need hash functions which are not purely random. And to do that, we will need all these notions of pairwise independence and so on. So you basically want to make it something look like random. So you'll use much lesser random bits than, perfectly random, which would require a lot of random bits. So this idea comes up in a lot of places. It is useful too. Yeah. It's an important resource in some places. And it's also a very important theoretical question also, whether how much randomness is actually necessary to solve a problem. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Sir, so this computation that you're doing, it's like same as like you take B bar, and you take bitwise and with the vertex.
Bitwise and with the vertex, okay, and then you take an XOR.
XOR of all the bits.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay,
that's true. Yeah. Okay, so then let's try to wrap up today's lecture. Just a couple of comments about some logistic issues. So I will send out one assignment tomorrow on problem set. Some 4 or 5 questions are there. And also I will give out a list of topics for reading, right? So there are around 10 topics. Each topic contains 1 or 2 papers related to that. You don't actually have to read the entire paper, but only parts of it that we will discuss as we go along. But your job would be to go over those papers briefly, just skim over their contents, right? Introduction and so on, abstract, introduction, and so on. Skim over that and find topics that you are interested in and that you want to read. Okay. So you can also form groups. I said groups of at most 3. I would prefer groups of size at least 2 and at most 3. Individually, you can do it, but I will not suggest that, right? It can make it very difficult. So groups of size 2 or 3, form the groups, go through the papers and see what you want to read. And I'll also share a Google Sheets where you can sign up which paper you want to read. Okay, form the groups and sign up there. I'll give out the list today, and you can submit your preferences by 25th of August, right? 2 weeks from now. Right? You can skim over the papers. Don't read too much into the papers. Just look at the topics and what are the sort of what. If you look at the abstract, you will see what is the paper about, right? What it's trying to solve, and maybe you can go look at the introduction and see whether you're interested in reading that topic, right? So I'll send out the list by today evening or tonight. And within 25th, you can mark your preferences, form groups, and mark your preferences. Okay. After that, I'll tell you how to go about that reading. Okay. That's all I wanted to say. Yeah. Any questions regarding that, the logistics part?
So just one question about today's lecture. Now, when you define the probability of V0 and V1 equals to the cut, you told that the random max cut defines a uniform distribution over the cuts in the graph.
Yes.
So can you just explain that line?
So what it means is that what is the probability? So if I fix a cut, it's basically this statement.
Yeah.
You fix a max cut. What is the probability that your algorithm will actually be constructing this cut?
Yeah.
Because that is 1 over 2 power n. Because what are you actually doing? If you look at this algorithm, what you're actually doing is the following, right? You're choosing an n-bit string uniformly at random, and all the indices that are 0, all those vertices you put in V0, and all the ones you put in V1.
Yeah.
So every n-bit string is sampled with equal probability. Therefore, every cut is sampled with equal probability. That is the idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. That's another way to look at it. Take a random n-bit string, and every n-bit string corresponds to a cut, and every n-bit string is sampled with equal probability. So every cut is also sampled with equal.
Like if I just remove one edge, it will be disconnected.
No. We are not talking about whether it's disconnected or not, right? A cut is just a partition of the vertex set. It doesn't talk about whether it's disconnected or connected.
Okay.
Right? A cut is just a partition of vertex set. You want a max cut is some partition where the number of edges that cross the cut is the maximum among all cuts.
Okay.
Right? That's what is max cut. Does that answer your question? Is it clear?
Yeah. And one thing more that you told about that scribing part. Will we be doing in LaTeX or
in LaTeX? So I have given the template file also.
Okay.
Right. So it is there on my home. It's there on the homepage, course homepage.
Okay.
It's also there on Moodle. You can register on Moodle. You'll see it there also. Right?
Okay.
And you can sign up on that scribe the sheet.
Yeah. Sure.
Anything else? Okay. So then let's wrap up today. Yeah. Thank you.